All right, so starting over. Uh, this is our end of October live stream, and we are also recording it that we'll post, I guess, on YouTube or something like that. Anyway, uh, what I was going to say, or was saying, in that we have basically reached the end of our years long battle mech printing, 3D printing, which has, because of the uh, greatness of Thingiverse and the greatness of other artists that have created the mechs for us to print, we have saved thousands, probably thousands of dollars. We have amassed a very large collection of battle mechs in larger scale, say 10 to 12 millimeter size. And remember, when we first started this adventure, our goal was to stop this tiny business of battle mechs because it's ridiculous. Now we get it, right? We do. Me and everybody else that's involved in our group here. We understand that the size of the mech is directly proportional to the size of the gaming surface. That's fine. And that the game is designed to be played on a relatively small surface. That's also fine. With relatively small terrain. Okay, fine. Well, we don't play that, right? We play at minimum a 4 by 3 foot size gaming table with 2.5 inch from flat to flat hexes. Therefore, all of our terrain is in scale with that flat to flat measure being one mech per hex, such that each of the mechs vary from 48 to 65 millimeters tall for the assault mechs. And that is approximately the 10 to 12 millimeter scale infantry scale. And why is that? Because we want to see the infantry, right? We want to see the vehicles. We want to see the starships, the spaceships, and so on. Little tiny things have no value. Only in mass do they have value. Ergo, I have a 10 millimeter Civil War collection. I can easily print a 10 millimeter Napoleonics collection. But the point is, this business of having little tiny miniatures that's not happening. That ain't going to happen anymore. To sound like, I was born in the States, but I wasn't born in a barn, as my mom would say. And in northern Minnesota, yeah, some people were. Okay. The point is the phraseology. No more tiny things moving and no more bits of snot running around the game table. Our goal is to replicate our fun that we have with Hexagon Mechanized. Got to talk right here this morning. Which is what basically World War II. Okay, mechanized. It's infantry, artillery, tanks, planes, blah blah blah. All right. And then move that into a future era, which is what we call Hex Command Nova. It's the same thing as Hex Command Mechanized, except it's science fiction. Well, what we think is science fiction, from what we know or can postulate. Over there, I'm sorry, wrong direction. There, we have our large game table, 8 feet by 5 feet, set up for Hex Command starships. Why is that? There's two reasons. One is, in the old days, we used to have two games set up side by side. One was a campaign map and the other one was a battlefield. You moved on the campaign map and then you conducted a battle on the battlefield map, which was next to it. So you had a 6x6, something like that, campaign map, moving little figures. They call it, Axis and Allies, or call it Risk, or call it what we replicated in the medieval era was Excalibur, right? Again, here we go again with the Excalibur thing, which we did and modified it for Starfleet battles. Well, it's not Starfleet, but Starship battles. We use the same map, just made it, space instead of on the ground in England in the Middle Ages. Excalibur, right? Same thing. It's medieval Monopoly. And then we had next to that the game table 4 by 3 feet, where you resolved any battles. Okay, that's it. Over again there, we have the large Hex Command Starships star map. And on that star map, we have the terrain of space, planets, asteroids, other starships, other fighter sized ships, transports, satellites, research stations, space stations. We even have a model of the Star Trek K7, which is awesome, by the way, and other space facilities, which is what we do with Hex Command Starships. It's totally fun. And it's just exactly the same concept as Hex Command Nova. The printouts are exactly the same. I could show them, but I'm not going to bother, online, the website. The Imagine Image website will have the database shows all the vehicles and stuff that we use. So getting back to where we started, it's all coming to an end, thankfully, gloriously. We have completed printing. Now, what does that mean? Well, on average, we have 2 of every mech that ever was, within reason. Is this Terry? Is this the clan invasion era? You know what? I don't really care. Don't really know. I'm not really that into it. The storyline. I just like the things that I like the way they look. And if they are available in a 3D print, then we got them and we print them and we're good. We're golden. Uh, in the old days, and I mean old days, when FASA owned BattleTech and everything just started, including all the references to star systems, planets, and so on. There were, again, I mentioned this one time way back, a group of people here in Illinois that were obsessed with BattleTech lore, as you would be obsessed with Warhammer 40K. I mean, or Harry Potter, or Lord of the Rings thing. I can't believe I said that. And or uh, all the other fantasy stuff. Right? Those people had volumes of data as if they were astronomers. They were the wisdom keepers, the shining ones, as Graham Hancock would say. Um, these guys had so much data. I think they all just checked into some local mental hospital or something. I don't know. But the volume of data that they had revolving around this game was exactly what you would expect from astronomers that are going through the research and making reports and everything and estimates and travel estimates of travel between star systems and what those star systems held, what kind of planets they held, what kind of resources those star systems had. Yeah, the whole 9-10 yards touchdown. That's what these guys are doing. I have no idea where they are. This was years ago in late 80s when I first moved here from Phoenix after moving to Phoenix from Toronto. Okay, you know my story. That's my story. The rest of my story regards Car Wars. And we may have had an episode or 2 or 10 on the script I was developing called Time Driver, which was a story in the Car Warsian universe. Post-apocalypse, post-collapse world of cars that had to be made out of plastic because steel didn't exist anymore. And ergo, because they're made out of plastic, motors were different. There were motors on each wheel instead of a central motor. Uh, Electric vehicles and how they got their power, etc., and all that kind of stuff. All the lore of this story was again uh, a huge thing for several different groups across the country, especially when my brother and the rest of my family moved here from Toronto, and my brother was in Vienna, Virginia, and he started getting into when he was young, very young, like 7. He started getting into Car Wars and BattleTech. And that's what drove all this in the early days. So that is where we are today. We are done printing. Now, as regarding Car Wars, our success is much, much less in the printing of vehicles for Car Wars Time Driver. Time Driver, ironically to say, took a back seat. And why? That doesn't mean it was any less fantastic. It just means that we only had time to do so much. Now that we're done with the Hex Command Nova BattleTech stuff, we can maybe get back into it. But the thing is, when it comes to Time Driver, kind of like any other miniatures game, if you don't have an immediate group around you, you're not going to use those miniatures. That game isn't going to happen, even though we do broadcast like you're looking at right now. We broadcast on the internet our games, and anybody can take place anywhere in the world. They can take part in playing the games by issuing their orders. Hey, okay, move this guy so and so. And that's why now, after all this time, you might be able to see this picture. We have all the hexes numbered. Okay. So, but Time Driver is a little different because it doesn't quite work that simple. It's not a military game. It's an urban combat adventure game where every player has objectives that they have to accomplish. And those objectives could be something as simple as just going to a grocery store, right? It's a mission. Go to the grocery store, get 3 batteries, and negotiate with someone for a 50 caliber ammo belt. You get the idea? Or there's been a rumor of a guy who's in so-and-so apartment complex. He's got this weird new machine, and you might want to check it out because it might be beneficial to your gang or your group. Okay, so that kind of stuff. In other words, again, it approaches the old days of my post-cinematography world of story writing, story creating, endless, rich text, storyline stuff. And are we ripping anything off from anybody? No, of course not, because we don't need to. The inspiration comes from Steve Jackson Games for Car Wars, of course, Hex Command. Well, we called it Streets. But it isn't entirely possible to have such a game in a hex grid. So that's why we don't really refer to it that way. It can be done, but it's more complicated. When you stick to a square grid for Time Driver, which is what we called it after we thought of Hex Command Streets, Time Driver essentially is a square grid cityscape and a matchbox toys with appropriately scaled models, 3D printed mostly, like people, objects, objectives, and so on. But the rest of them are all Matchbox Hot Wheels cars. Not the crazy fancy stuff, but the good stuff, including trucks, right? Dump trucks, etc. Garbage trucks. So that's it, right? That's where we are. Now, so you won't see videos on Time Driver because it will just maybe explain it, but there's not going to be anything happening. Now, as we are, again, going back to our beginning, wrapping up the production of the Battle Mechs in 3D printing, where I was saying thank you to all those people responsible for making those models. You all done a fantastic job, a man's job, as Gaff would say in Blade Runner. But there were not quite. There was some percentage of the models that were not able to be printed on filament. They were designed for resin. We chose to not use resin. We chose to do filament, which means we had to do quite a bit of tweaking to make those models print correctly because of the way that filament printers work. So there's a lot of models. All their resolutions came out very good. We printed between 0.18 and 0.16 layer thickness. And the 0.18 was fine. We print basically one mech every 1 hour and 20 minutes, something like that. But because we have 2 printers, that 1 hour and some minutes produces 2 mechs. Ergo, we have 2 of every mech ever. Correction. We have 2 of every mech that's available in 3D printing files. So thank you guys again for printing all those, for making all those, I should say, models, and for attempting, when they don't work in filament, attempting to make the models cross-platform, resin or filament. But please, for the sake of everybody's sanity, make them filament friendly first and resin printing second. The reason for that is there are gaps, nodules, crevices, spaces between legs, between armpits and chest. Those are the main problems that we have had printing filament, and we've had to fill in those gaps with pieces, shapes, so that when done printing, the strength of that armpit is reinforced. The strength of the ankle, the strength of the knee and the hip joint. All those things have to be reinforced because in resin printing, you don't really care about that. It's so perfect, right? Not likely going to snap. But in filament, unless you use like 100% infill, which nobody does, it's going to be a weak joint, a weak spot. We don't print with any infill at all. Why? Because it's faster. Well, why are you in such a hurry? The reason we're in such a hurry is because of the volume of stuff we needed to get done. And it's a good thing we did, because we would still be printing if we had any percentage of infill at all. Okay? So 0 infill, 0.18 resolution. With a raft, because we had 2 different printers. One prints without a raft, fine, but the other one doesn't. So we made a choice, print them both with rafts and supports. And when you have a mech, you have to split it in 2. It has to be upper torso and it has to be legs. The legs you can print standing up, but the upper torso with its guns has to be printed laying down. Why? Because filament printers can't print a tube sideways. Filament printers can only print gun tubes and such vertically. So we have to take our mech body and lay it on the platen or the plate so that the guns are facing up like this. Sometimes we can get a little bit of an angle, but most of the time it's right on its back. And sometimes, because of all the junk that people have thankfully done great drawings, accurate stuff, we don't need it. The back of the mech nobody cares about. We don't care what it looks like, but we need it to be smooth. It needs to be nice and smooth and not so craggy because of the filament itself. But they're not designed that way. So we have to accept that as a limitation. And when the mechs are done printing, if the back is all filled with messy filament lines, we have to go in and Dremel those out. Just sand them out, because the mech wasn't designed to be laying on its back. Sometimes, depending on how it's holding its weaponry, we can print a mech almost sitting up. But for 99% of the time, the mechs are laying down on their back. Not on their front, but laying on their back because their weapons are pointed forward, and that means up. So that's where we're at. And again, thank you guys for all that work you put in, because I don't have time to learn another thing. Maybe in the future, I don't know. So thanks for making all these drawings. And thanks for, and at some point, yeah, we might be opening up our resin printer, which is water-based, by the way, which is absolutely fine. We've done our entire 10 millimeter collection in the American Civil War with the resin printer, and we did it in 12 millimeter for World War II, which we are still pursuing. But the fact of the matter is there's only so much time and space. And now that we're reaching the end of this mech production, which we've noticed, yeah, you know what? Some of those mechs we may not have printed the proper size. We may have to print them again. We thought that was the right height, but now that we look at them, you're right, they're right in front of us. The whole gallery is right in front of us right here, like 50 mechs. That's only like a quarter of what we actually have. But those are just the recent prints in the last 6 months. Some of them may be too small. They're medium and heavy mechs, but sometimes those medium mechs just look too small. And we should probably print them all pretty close to the same height. Heavy and medium is just a classification. It's really not a visual indicator. Sometimes it is, but not always. It might look heavy, but it's actually medium, or the reverse. It might look medium, but it's actually heavy, right? According to Sarna, by the way, our main source of information is Sarna for all the mechs and all the artwork. Yeah, we're taking it from Sarna. We created our database of all the mechs we have using images and text from Sarna. Why? Because it's online and it's fantastic. The guys who are doing the Sarna organization, we love these guys. We love these guys. As my Dutch friend in Canada's dad would say, these guys are fakes, meaning fake, which these guys are not, but it sounds funny. He was Dutch. Fake. El. These guys are fakes. He meant to say fag, but it came out sounding like fake, which was hysterical. He had to be there, right? All right, so no names, but if you're watching it, you know who you are. Anyway, that's what we're getting at, that these guys are fantastic. These guys are fantastic, right? At Sarna. Some of the mechs also, in conclusion, are a little wonky because maybe their design is wonky, but when they get printed, we look at it and we go, that's weird. The body looks way too big for the hip structure. The torso looks way too big for the legs. What's going on here? Well, in some cases, we actually had to tweak the size, thickness, breadth of some of these parts to make it look right. Because maybe the guy did the drawing but didn't actually print it. Doesn't really know how it comes out. Well, we have it and we're looking at it. And I'm not, of course, naming anybody because I don't remember who you are. But the fact is, in general, thank you for everything you've done. The Ostrock mech is an example. I don't know where we found it, but we got one, an STL file, and we printed it. And I'm looking at it right now. It's right in front of me. And I'm like, wait a minute. Why does that look so weird? Is it supposed to look like that? He's really like skinny. He's very skinny and tall, and that's the Ostrock. I guess that's what it's supposed to look like. Because we didn't change it in any percentage other than making it, taller. Well, I mean, proportionally speaking, you click and drag and you make it proportionally taller. So it's a taller mech. But it just kind of looks weird. And last thing to be said on this 3D printing business is the fact that a lot of these things have to be edited, and for those edits, we use Mesh Mixer. What am I talking about? Antennas, guys, don't do antennas. Backpacks, take it easy. Make the back of the mech very simple. Don't complicate the back of the mech, please. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Everybody only cares about what the mech looks like in its front. The back is immaterial. Jump jets, don't bother. There's no sense in it. It's just needless work for the printer to do. It doesn't need to do it. You can print those little jets and glue them on afterwards. Oh, geez, that's not the spirit of the idea. Well, too bad. Okay? Just take it easy when you're designing, or please open up your file, redesign it, and make the back of the mech simpler. Why? So that when you print it on its back, it doesn't fill up by the printer trying to get this accurate business going on in the guy's backside. All these nooks and crannies and shapes and jets and hoods and all this other kind of shapes and stuff in the back, forget it. Just make it nice and smooth. Make it round. Just make it nice and smooth, not so complicated. Maybe one or two crevices, but that's it. Please. It makes it so much easier. And it makes it easier to take apart and when it's done printing and take off the supports, etc. Anyway, so and like I said earlier, please get those gaps filled of armpits and hip to leg joints. Thicken those things up, please. Oh, but that's not the shape, Terry. That's not the mech itself designed. Too bad. Okay, the mech isn't designed right. The mech is designed to look like that because it's the future. The mech has to be reinforced for its armpits, its elbows, don't forget the elbows, its knees and ankles and hips. So thicken those things up, put in pieces that will fill those gaps and make those things easier to remove, both from the raft and from the supports, please. Thank you. You're welcome. So that's it. We will come back. We'll take a break. We'll come back with more as we continue to look at this little interesting game table setup, which is a attack on a mining facility, which is defended by robotic weaponry. Uh, Only because it was an interesting idea, not because it's part of a campaign or anything. It was just interesting. So we'll come back and we'll talk about it, and or maybe we'll take it all down and we'll set up something completely different. Because frankly, I miss green. Like John Lithgow said in 2010, I miss green. Um, okay, there you are. Thanks. We'll come back later. Again, sorry, I cannot, you know, on the website, I can't put an automated now live thing. It doesn't have that ability. I wish it did. Whenever I go live and live stream, it would have the on the homepage a blinking thing that would say live now broadcasting, right? But it doesn't do that. Someday. All right. Thanks.